All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Dave Gulas. Dave, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here.
I'll tell you, you and I, we met on LinkedIn. We just kind of like ran into each other on LinkedIn, and we messaged each other a little bit, and then we're like, well, hey, let's have a conversation and get to. I think I was the one that said, let's have a conversation and get to know each other, and so we did that a little while back, and then I was like, Dave, I would really love to interview you for the podcast, and so here we are. And what's really cool about this is right before we hit the record button, I just found out that like you and I are not only fathers, but fathers to a lot of kids. And you've got six kids and I got seven, and so man, we can relate on a whole lot of levels when it comes to being fathers and parenting and all of that kind of stuff. And so, and I have been looking
Ye-
forward to having this conversation with you, and I just I want to dig in. I want to just start off by turning it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context for our listeners and give them a little bit of an idea of who Dave is and what you're all about. And so, why don't you just kind of start? I'll kind of cast a broad net and give you a little bit of leeway and stuff, but just be able to talk about what you do and who you serve and what inspires you most about the work you do, Dave, and the impact you guys are making in the world.
Okay, so as far as what I do, I'm the president and co-founder of Easy DC 3PL. So we provide warehousing, fulfillment, and transportation services for e-commerce brands and manufacturers, uh, headquartered in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I also host the Beyond Fulfillment podcast, which is a weekly interview show where I interview a wide variety of entrepreneurs about their journey and what it's really like.
Okay.
And as far as what inspires me, listen, I've been in sales my entire adult life, and I've always just had a knack for it, enjoyed it, been good at it. And for me, nothing feels better than really helping a customer through a sales transaction. And now I get to sell something I helped to create. So, what could be better?
That is awesome. So how is your background in sales really benefited you and the work you guys are doing now through your company?
Well, so I mean, so much of entrepreneurship I mean, if I had to pick one singular skill that's going to help you as an entrepreneur, I would say it would be sales, right?
Sure.
Because nothing happens until you make a sale, till you have a customer, right? No other parts of the business can begin to, function and have a reason to exist. So I've always, thought it's super important, and I've enjoyed it, and it's provided a great income over the years, provided a lot of opportunity, taught me a lot, and it's just been incredibly enjoyable. So yeah, I've always, once I found sales and started and found out it was something I enjoyed, I've always just focused on that.
Yeah. And so who's the ideal kind of client that you guys get to serve, Dave?
So there's really two buckets. So it's when you think about an e-commerce company, someone that sells products online, whether through Shopify or some of these other channels, when they start, most of the time they start doing their fulfillment in-house.
Okay.
So there always comes like a graduation point to where as a brand continues to grow and scale, they have to make the decision at some point to outsource the fulfillment aspect, because as the business continues to grow, managing your own fulfillment, it can be done, but it's incredibly challenging. And for most entrepreneurs, it's probably the right option to outsource that so they can focus on their zone of genius, what they're best at, and leave the fulfillment aspect to people that specialize in that. So we help those brands that are outsourcing fulfillment, or many brands are already with a 3PL, a third-party logistics company that they're not happy with. Statistically speaking, 60% of brands are not happy with their 3PL, and we talk to them
Wow.
almost every day. So we really strive to create an outstanding customer experience and provide a very different than how most 3PLs operate in terms of we want to respond quick, we want to go the extra mile, we want to execute everything on time, no orders left behind, and really be because we really are an extension of the brand's business. So we
Yeah.
take that very seriously. And I mean, we hear literally horror stories all the time about no response, orders not going, can't get a hold of anyone, no one to call, uh, days and days without a response. And these are not small brands either. I mean, this is happening to large blue chip brands that everyone would know. Many of
Wow.
them are just getting subpar service from the
Yeah.
3PL. So we really aim to provide a different experience for those brands.
Yeah. I did not realize that 60% of these companies were just so unhappy with the service that they're receiving from their supplier like that and stuff. And that definitely represents a huge opportunity for you guys, doesn't it? And so
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Absolutely.
so what is and I'm sure you can come up with all kinds of examples, but what's an example of a result that you guys have helped get for one of your clients that you're just incredibly proud of?
Well, so even right now, right, we have a company that was in numerous different 3PLs and they weren't happy with the service they're getting. So they went with us and they started with a small amount and we really worked hard to deliver for them. And now, I mean, they're consolidating all of their business to us and we're actually now looking for a bigger building to make that happen. So I mean, just stories like that too, to
Yeah.
where, and again, right, with a large company that, they're with some larger 3PLs that just, and the stories we hear too about the service is just, it's crazy, but so often, right? Because logistics isn't easy too, right? There's a lot of moving parts,
Yes.
there's a lot of things that have to be done. And in the marketplace at large, you do see a lot of complacency. So a way you can really stand out and that's actually the reason me and my business partner are both from the pharmaceutical industry. And where we come from, it's a very, everything's going overnight, everything's urgent, and things go wrong all the time. So you to even survive in that world, you have to have a very high touch customer service, customer oriented approach to how you do business. So that's just like automatic for us. Like it does, 5 o'clock doesn't hit and we don't just not look at our phone, we don't not respond to people if there's an issue going on, right? We're used
Yeah.
to just having to be available. So we thought when we saw other companies that we knew having issues with their 3PLs and their logistics providers, we thought our brand of service would fit well within this industry, which is why we even got into it in the first place almost 3 years ago. And yeah, it's been a journey building the company, and yeah, here we are.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set, I'm going to switch gears just slightly, and I'm going to reiterate the question that I want to ask you for the benefit of our listeners. So, Dave, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I mean, there's been several. There's been actually some really interesting serendipities and whatever you want to call it, coincidences throughout my life. So I guess I'll just tell you kind of the story too of like because a lot of it
Okay.
is how I got into sales and how the story evolved, and then how
Okay.
I, up to the company that we started now. But when I got into, I did a lot of telemarketing and stuff like that as a teenager, and I was always good at it. And then I got my first real sales job at this home goods kind of membership club. This is
Okay.
pre-internet, pre-Amazon, all that kind of stuff. So this is like around late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And so it was like a whole, you would have to invite people into the membership club, and there was this whole script, and there was this, you book appointments and you do a presentation for them. And the owner, it was like a franchise type club, but the owner was very much into personal development. So it was like required reading for us to read The Magic of Thinking Big when we started, and he had this whole bookcase of all this personal development. So he really introduced me to personal development, which was really
Okay.
fundamental to kind of, succeeding in sales and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I worked there for a number of years, did real well. I was, basically one of the top performers there. I would train all the new people. I would do these sales presentations, these group live sales presentations, about 45 minutes long, like a memorized script that you'd have to give and that sort of thing. And I had actually just won a trip to the Bahamas, because they had all these kind of corporate gifts or, like
Okay.
prizes you could win and that type of thing. And I actually never got to go on it because thereafter, like someone else that was kind of there and sort of competing with me basically had told the manager there some things about me that weren't true and actually got me fired.
Wow.
So, I had spent about 4 years at the company, and I had had my first child and, kind of, and was co-parenting at the time too. So kind of learning how to do that. And then this happens. And I was just like, wow, I was like, kind of upset and
Yeah.
depressed and
Yeah.
man, what's going on here? But I was like, okay, got to move on. And, it seemed like a terrible thing at the time. But lo and behold, maybe less than 2 months later, I found this other company to work at, and I would end up spending close to 20 years there. I
Wow.
would then pretty much kind of double my income right from the start. And it was interesting too, because all the sales techniques that we had learned at this membership club,
Uh-huh.
company, right? And it was all based on like a marketing system and voice inflection and the right way to ask a closing question and all these different sales techniques. So I took that and I applied it to like the medical and the pharmacy aspect of the new company that I was with, and I
Yep.
instantly was kind of like the top salesperson pretty much right off the bat, and was
Wow.
kind of and just from taking what I learned over here and applying it over there, and then I would go on to meet the woman that would become my wife at that company, and I would have an incredible career there, and did very well, became an executive, and learned so much about the medical, the pharmaceutical industry, and I would even meet my future business partner through that company. And yeah, so what seemed like a terrible event at the time, looking back, turned out to be the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Yeah, and okay, so you get fired from this initial job, then took you about 2 months to find another job with a company that you ultimately stayed at for 20 years. And but right away, as soon as you start working there, you double what you were making at the other job. I mean, right out of the gate and stuff. Just 2 months later, and then just applying what you learned at the previous company, you end up becoming the top salesman at the new company and stuff, and continue to grow from there. And end up meeting your wife there, and so and if I remember right, you told me you met your current business partner in that job too. Is that right? And
Yeah, yeah. So that was interesting. It's a whole other story, but
well,
yeah.
that's all right because I want to hear it too. So yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it was probably about 10 years ago too, where he had a pharmaceutical company. He was kind of like a friendly competitor of where I was at, and he was really struggling. And the company I worked for was looking to buy his company.
Okay,
So, being that I was like a key executive, I was spending a lot of time with him because if the acquisition went through, we would be working closely together and doing all this stuff. And anyway, so it was a long, drawn out process, but ultimately that whole deal fell apart and it never happened. But through the
okay,
process of thinking it was going to happen, he and I worked closely together for a number of months and we became great friends in the process. And we always stayed friends thereafter, even though I mean, the deal fell apart, but everyone kind of
yep.
stayed friends for a long time, and it was fine. And anyways, ultimately later on, the company that I was at ended up going out of business. And as soon as that happened, me and my friend Chris, we started this 3PL fulfillment company in late 2022.
Wow, wow. That's a heck of a story. And man, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it, Dave, when we look back and we just see kind of the series of events, the series of people that came into our lives at the time they came into our lives and how it all led to getting us where we are to right here, right now, and stuff. And I mean, what a beautiful example of that you just shared, and what a testament to the power of relationships, right there, which of course is what this podcast is all about. And so the next question I want to ask you, I'm sure you can come up with a lot of examples too. I just want to challenge you to come up with one though. And so I want you to think, what is this situation? What's an experience where you had where you personally you got to make a really big impact, and yet you also maybe even it surprised you a little bit in the moment, but at the same time you also know that would have never happened, that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with any number of whoever you've talked about so far today. What's an example of something like that, Dave?
Something where I got to make a really big impact that I wouldn't have even thought was possible,
Yeah, if not for
based
your
on,
relationship with any of whoever you might want, whoever you've been talking about.
um, yeah, geez. I mean, right. Well, even when we started the 3PL company,
Okay.
so I would just say, so yeah, I mean, again, right? Like, my partner Chris, who I met through, right? Just
Yep.
thinking of that. Like when we started this company, right? I was used to the old way of selling where you would just have a list of customers and you'd call them and, you'd sell commodities, you'd establish relationships. Anyways, when we got into logistics, the way you have to sell is totally different, where you really have to have a personal brand and you have to be out there, you have to be available. People have to find you because you never know when people are looking for warehouses, and so often they find you when they're looking. So in terms of, I was basically invisible online, right? I wasn't creating content, I wasn't active on social media, because everything through the pharmaceutical industry was very niche and people didn't want, knowing who their customers were and all that kind of stuff. So through this process too, through creating content and learning how to do that, and then launching my own podcast, um, I've totally transformed kind of the way I operate, the way I sell, and numerous people have told me too. Even the podcast itself has impacted them, and they've learned from all these different entrepreneurs that I interview and the content we put out and all that sort of thing. So that never would have happened had we not started this logistics company, and I had to transform the way I sell and I operate, and get on social media and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a great story that is. Wow. 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 And I mean, I can only imagine how that's been for you, because I know, for me, we launched the $1 Million Relationships podcast 3 years ago, and hosting this podcast has been hands down the most rewarding and impactful thing I've done in my 30 years as an entrepreneur. It's been an absolutely amazing experience, and just allows me to connect with so many amazing entrepreneurs who are making such a huge impact through their businesses and stuff. And it was like, it's not like things weren't going well before the podcast. They were, but boy, I'll tell you what, this podcast has added some rocket fuel for sure. And I imagine that you've had the same kind of experience and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a source of a good amount of direct business, and yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest part of it too is just I've always liked to study successful people,
Yeah.
and so being able to have a platform to interview all these successful entrepreneurs, and the cool part is too is like you might look at someone from the outside and you see their accolades or you see the business they've built or whatever, and you might have some kind of notion of what it's been like for them, and just hear it when I get to talk to people and hear their stories and understand how they got to where they are. I mean, it's just in some of the incredible things people have overcome or had to deal with or had to persevere through, it really helps you put in perspective maybe some of the, like it, it just amazes me too to hear people's stories and understand what they've been through and how they got to where they are. I've always enjoyed that part of the
Absolutely.
podcast journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for anybody that's listening to this right now going, man, Kevin, I really like Dave. I love who he is. I love how he shows up. And maybe they're even listening to some of the stuff that you've shared and they're thinking like, wow, maybe he can help us out and stuff. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks?
Yeah, I'm definitely very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me at
Okay.
LinkedIn, Dave Gulas, Gulas. If you are looking for 3PL services, warehousing, fulfillment, transportation, you can check out easydc3pl.com. And if you want to hear some cool entrepreneur stories that you can learn from and get valuable, actionable insights and things you can learn to apply to your own journey, check out the Beyond Fulfillment podcast. And we are on YouTube and everywhere else podcasts are heard.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Dave, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to getting this out there and share this with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
You bet.